Chris here. In case you don't know me, I'm the executive director of the Desert Advocacy Media Network and the host of 90 Miles from Needles, the Desert Protection Podcast, and Giving Tuesday is coming up. And last year, about this time, we showed up the way small nonprofits usually show up on Giving Tuesday. Me at the laptop, pushing things out on social media, our board pitching in, doing what they can. And all of us were trying to be heard over the roar of the big, well-staffed organizations with entire teams devoted to development and fundraising. And the truth is, we got drowned out. A lot of smaller groups did. And that got us thinking. We like those big groups that drowned us out just fine. They're our friends, they're our colleagues. And it's not their fault that they have more firepower than a lot of smaller organizations. But we don't want to compete with groups whose work complements ours. These aren't rivals. They're our allies and friends. There are people and organizations working in the dust and the heat and the quiet places trying to hold the line when the desert's under threat. So on this Giving Tuesday, we're going to do something different. We're giving the spotlight away, as much of it as we own. We want to lift up some groups that matter deeply to us, doing essential work in the desert and the borderlands, but without the big megaphones that larger groups seem to have at the ready. If you've got a little generosity to spare this week, consider sending it their way. We'll start with Basin and Range Watch at basinandrangewatch2.org. Basin and Range Watch has spent a couple of decades out in the Mojave and Great Basin tracking every major renewable energy proposal that threatens desert habitat. They understand better than almost anyone that climate solutions can't come at the cost of bulldozing millennia-old creosote rings, or bighorn sheep corridors, or sacred cultural landscapes. They were part of the push behind Solar Done Right, which was a think tank on how to do solar, well, right, by putting it on rooftops and carports and parking lots in the built environment first, rather than defaulting to our public lands with intact ecosystems and beleaguered wildlife. Solar energy doesn't have to mean sacrificing the desert to industrial build-out, and Basin and Range Watch have been leading that charge for a long time. They're at basinandrangewatch2.org. Now, those of you who have listened to our most recent episode of the podcast as I speak, that's episode number 43 of season 4, know about Save the Scenic Santa Ritas, scenicsanaritas.org. They are the backbone of resistance to the Rosemont/Copper World mine in the Santa Rita Mountains. They're the ones reading the thousands of pages of agency paperwork, showing up at hearings, organizing communities, supporting litigation, and reminding everyone that the Santa Rita Mountains and the water beneath them are not expendable. Their persistence is the big reason this landscape still has a fighting chance. You can support them by going to scenicsanaritas.org. The Border Chronicle. Now, people who have been listening to the podcast will not be at all surprised that they are on this list. But the Border Chronicle at theborderchronicle.com is a podcast and Substack newsletter founded by Todd Miller and Melissa Del Bosque, who are two of the most respected Borderlands journalists working today. The Border Chronicle delivers deeply nuanced, excellently reported stories about the U.S.-Mexico border, covering topics like surveillance, wall construction, wildlife, migrants, and the way all of these intersect in the desert. They're reporting, and they've added some wonderful additional reporters in the last year. Their work brings clarity and compassion to a region too often reduced to a political talking point by people that actually don't give a damn about the desert. TheBorderChronicle.com. Wildlands Defense. Heading north a little bit. Wildlands Defense at wildlandsdefense.org is a small but fearless group documenting off-road vehicle destruction, grazing damage, and agency neglect in the northern Great Basin Desert, northern Nevada, and Idaho. Wildlands Defense is walking the washes, climbing the ridges, and documenting the harm that others sometimes overlook. Then they back it up with legal pressure and public accountability. They're doing on-the-ground protection work in the northern Great Basin, and they deserve your support. Wildlandsdefense.org. The Sky Island Alliance, skyislandalliance.org, works in some of the most ecologically vibrant mountains in North America, restoring springs, tracking wildlife corridors, removing invasive plants, and documenting the ecological fallout of the border wall. Their combination of rigorous fieldwork and a dedicated volunteer base has made them indispensable for understanding how the borderlands are changing and how they can heal along with the rest of the desert. No More Deaths at nomoredeaths.org is a humanitarian organization working to prevent death in the desert, especially for migrants, but also for anybody else that happens to be out there in trouble. They leave water, food, and aid in places where U.S. policy has made migrant survival nearly impossible. They document abuses, provide care, and insist that human life is not a political bargaining chip. No More Deaths saves lives, plain and simple. And look, this is an extremely short list. There are so many groups out there doing vital work across the desert Southwest and the borderlands, and if we didn't mention your favorite today, do that in the comments. Feel free to tag them. We want to help you highlight them and celebrate them. We'd love to hear who you're supporting, and we'd love to learn about the groups that matter to you. These are the people we want to lift up today, and instead of asking you to support us, we're asking you to support them, because solidarity feels a whole lot better than competition. And because the desert and the people and the wildlife trying to stay alive in the desert need all of us pulling together. And one last thing to make the development professionals in the audience stop rolling their eyes. We know we're stepping back from fundraising on this Giving Tuesday, but if you do want to support our work, the podcast, the reporting, advocacy, you can absolutely do that at 90milesfromneedles.com/donate, and we're deeply grateful for it. Regardless of who you donate to, let's make 2026 the year of protecting the desert. Thanks.